It's the Brad and John Show.
It is the Brad and John Show. This is the C block, Charlie block, for today's date. Today is August 11th, 2025, and the C block means we start right around 7:40 or so, but we're late again this morning. Why is that, John? Why come we're always late? I don't understand that.
I have no idea. It's not like us to be garrulous.
Garrulous, I like that. By the way, I don't know if you know this or not, but did you know that Jasmine Crockett was in town over the weekend, coming back to see some of her old high school friends?
Yeah, and she clicked her heels together like Dorothy and blew out my eardrums with a very loud drop.
I went to the meeting, and I was introduced to her.
And what happened, Brad?
Well, I'm going to
take my headphones off. I'll just imagine the conversation.
And she came up to me, and she said, I said, "How you doing, Jasmine?" And she looked at me, and she said,
"What would you do with a brain if you had one?"
Okay. I'm sorry.
Boy, you can't see that coming from a mile away.
Interesting story. There's a couple stories that have been on the web about people that are currently working for her who have told this, now, in other words, not giving their real name or, background kind of stuff, and people who have worked for her that talk about she is just impossible to work for. And they talk about the fact that get this, we talk about taxpayer money. She has to have, and they talk about there's something in D.C., you might know this because you work there, from point A to point B, most of the representatives walk. Does that make any sense? Does that from their what?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and remember, Brad, I was there for 2 months as an intern, so I wouldn't say I worked there. But yeah, most stuff in the Capitol complex is quite close to each other.
Right, and supposedly from like the Capitol Hill to one of the office buildings where she's at, most people walk, but she does not. She has to have one of her staff members pick her up, and every week they rent a luxury SUV. And if she gets upset if it's not an Escalade, and she has one of her staff members pick her up and drive her down the street and drop her off, they talk about how she's impossible to work for, and they talk about how she's very demanding, and she yells and screams at everybody, and they talk about how she's just the diva, and most of the time she's not in her office, and the only time she really shows up at her office is if there's some kind of an availability for her to go viral on one of her rants on TikTok or something like that. I mean, I don't know. The whole thing's crazy. Now, the interesting thing about this was the mayor of D.C. has done a 180. Do you know about this story?
Does this have to do with Trump wanting to send some help into D.C.?
Well, the interesting part of this is that when Trump version 1, the mayor of D.C. her and Trump had a very contentious relationship. Just today, I believe in about, let me think, they're on Eastern time, so it's coming up on 9 o'clock. We're about an hour and 13 minutes away at this point in time from a big press conference in D.C., which will feature the Trumpster and Mayor Bauer. I think is there an S on her name? Is she Bowers or just Bauer? Do you know that?
I don't know the answer to that. No.
Okay, Bower in parentheses S, because I'm not sure if there's a Bowers on the end. They are going to jointly announce, once again, and the other interesting thing about this is that supposedly during the first Trump administration, she went to the White House once, and now she goes almost on a weekly basis, sometimes more than once a week, to meet with Trump. And together, today, they are going to announce a new program to A, clean the crime up in D.C., and B, beautify D.C., because Trump is upset because there's areas of D.C. that are not very nice. And if you know the interesting story with Washington, D.C., it being a planned city, there's a lot of different things that were put into D.C. way back when, which were done for a reason. There was like a planned city, almost like Newtown in St. Charles, but that's a whole other story. But which, quite honestly, you ever been to Newtown before, John?
Are you being sarcastic?
Yes.
Oh,
no.
Okay, good.
No, you've been to Newtown, right?
Yeah, we discussed this in depth about 6 weeks ago on the air.
And it scares you, doesn't it?
No, I think it's great. We also discussed this in detail on the air, Brad. Yeah, it doesn't scare me at all. I think that it's a wonderful place. Like, I wouldn't choose to live there because it's a little too cookie cutter for me. But when you go there, you know you're safe. And most importantly, people can have political events there, and they know Brad won't show up. So Mike Elam can have an event and be like, "Oh yeah, Brad, totally come," and he knows that Brad will get lost and not taint the crowd with his presence.
Speaking of Mike, I just got a text concerning our last segment where I was talking about the fact that we need superintendents who would stay more than 6 months, or in this case, more than a month and a half, and not even work. And John was saying, well, that's the old-timey days when you had people
it sure is. Okay. What did Mike Otten have to say about it?
Mike said, fresh thinking and a new bunch of friends that need to get rich. That's what
Yeah, hey, see, Mike has a good point. Mike has a good point. Now, I think when somebody comes to Francis Howell or Zumwalt, they probably don't have the freedom to create a cabinet of 20 people with a high budget. But as always, Mike's point is well taken.
Okay. Let us go back for a minute to the Billy Long thing. Okay. Do you think this is an insult to Billy Long?
No, I think that Billy probably, let's face it, I think Billy probably wasn't cut out to be a yes man in an administration that has career civil servants in it. And I think, for all we know, Brad, Billy could have come to the president and said, hey, I need some help getting around these people. And then either Trump or someone close to Trump could have said, yeah, everybody has that problem. It's not going to get better. You want to go somewhere else? And Billy could pick a country, and there you go. I mean, for all we know, it was Billy banging his head against a wall and saying, either help me out here or find somewhere for me to land. Interesting.
Okay, next topic. And I make fun of NPR and all the time, and they have some. And you always ask me, well, why it's so bad? Why do you listen? Because there are good things in NPR. You just have to get through all the political garbage. And on Sunday, they run a program. They run a program that's actually an hour long, but it's actually two different programs. Sort of interesting. And the second segment is with a guy by the name of Guy Raz. Do you know who Guy Raz is? That name rings a bell?
No, I have never heard of him.
Guy Raz, interesting guy. Used to do a thing. He used to do a chronicle of the TED Talks. That's how a lot of people or NPR fans knew him, because he ran the TED Talk show, where they would have excerpts from these leaders who would give TED Talks, and they would sit in the studio and interview them about the various things and intersperse it with actual quotes out of their TED Talk thing. Okay, he now runs a program called How I Built This. And he has guests on who are successful entrepreneurs who have done well. And they've sort of changed the format. It used to be half an hour of these people telling how they did their things. Now they've turned it into a session where the first 10 minutes is they get a biography of how this person became successful, how they made a lot of money. And then the next 20 minutes concern people who are running their own business, and it's like an advice line kind of thing. Does that make any sense? In other words,
yeah, I get what you're saying.
Okay, and they first 10 minutes is here's why the guy or gal's so great, and then they go, hey, here's Jill, who's running a cookie company in Seattle, and Jill has a marketing question for our guest. Okay, yesterday they had a fascinating interview. This was on the second segment, but one's between 1:30 and 2 in NPR, our KWMU St. Louis Public Radio, and they interviewed Troy Carter. Now, you probably don't know who Troy Carter is. But
no, I've never heard of that.
Well, Troy Carter is an interesting guy. I knew who he was ahead of time because I'm a nerd and stuff like this. Troy Carter was a guy who essentially ran a very successful company, did a promotions company, and at one point in time, things did not go well for him. He almost got his house foreclosed on, lived in L.A. As a matter of fact, his wife and his wife's mother both pawned their wedding rings. Apparently they had big rocks, and they pawned their wedding rings to forestall their house getting foreclosed on. They were in terrible trouble because his business went downhill, and he meets a young woman who is in need of career advice, and the young woman happens to be Lady Gaga. So Nick Carter essentially sees that this woman is extremely talented and says, I can make you into a star. And he talks about the fact that when nobody knew who she was, that he had a van that he had. I guess it was, I don't know if it was like a work van or maybe like one of those nice Mercedes-Benz Sprinter vans or something like that. Anyway, he talked about driving up and down the coast in California with Lady Gaga, taking her at various events and introducing her and having her press the flesh and meet people and sing and stuff like that. And obviously the rest is history. He made her very famous. And now he runs a company called Atom Works, ATOM, Atom Works, and essentially they do public relations. And interestingly enough, you might get interested in this because he's become a very successful investor in businesses. He plays the stock market, and he's become an angel investor. He's made a lot of money. Apparently, he was on the first round for Uber, a couple other big companies that have made a tremendous amount of money in the stock market if you were in on the ground floor like he was. His interesting part of the show was he was talking about that, and this was part of what they were talking about, that social media, advertising on social media, on the site, specifically your favorite, Instagram and Facebook, has cratered. And not from the fact that people aren't still doing it. He says people are pouring money into it, but the effectiveness has been tremendously diminished. And he talks about the fact there's a big term, if you're into internet advertising, called ROAS. You know what ROAS is, John?
Return on, define it for me.
Return on advertising spent. Okay, so everybody's always talking about the fact that if you spend $1, you're supposed to make 10. And he said that when he first started doing advertising on the very social sites, he was not unusual for him to get 10 to 20 times return on ad spend. In other words, if he spent $1, if he was selling whatever he was selling, he got 10 or 20 or $15 back in return. He said that the algorithms have been so tightly drawn in, and they're trying to essentially squeeze everybody for more money. He says now that the average person that does advertising on Facebook and Instagram is lucky if they get 2 to 3 times ROAS, and he says a lot of times it becomes a negative number. You spend $1 on advertising, you get 50 cents in sales. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, why is everybody still gaga, and pardon the phrase, because he talked about Lady Gaga, why is still everybody gaga on social media advertising? You know why that is, John?
Yeah, I think that people probably look at the numbers, Brad, people that are successful business people, and they say, okay, it might not be what it used to be, but what are we going to do? Are we going to go buy ads on radio?
Yes, that's exactly what they should be saying.
Was that the punchline, Brad? You know what he should have done with that van with 4 minutes left in the show? He should have gone parked outside the Washington Town and Country Fair so that for 20 years he could have a story about how they were mean to him at the fair and kicked him out.
That's a true story, John.
Can you tell us the story?
Do you really want to know?
Yeah.
You know what? I don't have time to tell the whole story. It's a very frustrating story because, John, in your life, have you ever been accused of something that you didn't do, and no matter what you said, the person doesn't believe that you...
No, I've done so many bad things that 100% of what you hear about me is true.
Well, in this case, well, to a certain extent, I may be in the same boat as you, but to this case, I did not do anything wrong, and I was kicked out of our radio station was kicked out of the fair 9-10 months after it happened, and it's a crazy, weird story.
And how many years ago was did this happen last year?
Oh, no. It's been.
So there's probably new leadership, and the people that are around in 2025 are probably not responsible for this incident years ago, Brad, right?
Well, the interesting part of that is that the number 2 person is now the number 1 person, and the number 2 person had a big thing to do with this. So your supposition is incorrect in the fact that...
Okay. And do you think maybe, unlike other people, they might have grown as a person and be willing to let bygones be bygones and not carry a grudge for more than a decade?
No.
Oh, okay.
That's all there is to it. No.
Okay.
And the crazy part of it is that what's frustrating to me, and the reason I bring this up, which is actually sort of funny, John on his farm show, which by the way is very interesting. Believe it or not, I listened to it. I listened to the entire thing. If I don't listen to it actually over the air, since you send it to me and I have to put in the computer, I do listen to the parts that I have not heard. It's very interesting. You bring up a lot of interesting stuff in there, and like we talked about last week, fascinating to me that all the agriculture that's going on in St. Charles and Warren and Jefferson and Franklin counties. A lot of people don't realize that. Okay, so the point that I was going to make was that there's a situation that's frustrating to me in that if you're trying to help someone and you know you can help someone and they just don't give a poop about you. You know what I'm saying? It's just one of those things.
Yeah, I get it. But Brad, we've talked about this in various contexts through the show. You are a well-intentioned man. You are a magnanimous man. You try to help people. And not everybody is open to getting help from you or anybody else. And it's their right. If people want to be jerks and not accept your help, it's every bit their right to be a jerk and not accept your help.
I get it. And once again, are you talking about Randy Raley and Kevy Kev? Is that who you're talking about?
I am not. Although yesterday, Brad, I was driving in Franklin County, and I heard my favorite song, which is KBDZ as in the Westplex, and I heard Katie Cruz and her bolt-ons get a shout-out. I hear Randy Raley and Kevy Kev get a shout-out.
Right.
It's my favorite song on the station, Brad.
I'm telling you, and that runs about 5 or 6 times a day. I'm promoting another radio station.
It's better than a dog doo-doo commercial.
You talking about Washington Pooper Scoopers? They do a great job.
Yeah, I was thinking of my original plan was to not approach advertisers until the end of August, but then I hear a Washington dog doo-doo commercial running during the farm show, and I think, let's move the timeline up a week. Let's send out the pitch because I want to stop hearing that ad.
Okay, John, it's come to that point in our day when we have to do. You know what that is?
Oh, what do we have to do, Brad?
We have to ask a person what they think about Brad. And you know what that person is, John?
I have my headphones backed away. What is it?
What would you do with a brain if you had one?
No, it's time for us to say goodbye. Say goodbye, John.
See you tomorrow, Brad.